Hello Goobers and welcome back to the Kababian YouTube channel. Donkey Kong Bonanza has been released, and with it brings 17 new world or planet layers to explore, all of which have unique mechanics, gimmicks, and themes to keep them interesting, which is why today I'm going to be ranking them all from worst to first. This list will be based off of how much fun I personally had with each layer, meaning yes, this video will feature opinions.
What? No, dude!
Just figured I'd give that disclaimer. Beyond that though, I'm also ranking these layers based off of each one's respective theme, gimmick, and its gameplay. Now, before we get started, I want to mention that this video will show heavy spoilers to multiple sections of Bonanza, just something to be aware of if you haven't played the game yet. Finally, if you go on to enjoy this video, please consider leaving a like or subscribing, as I'm trying to hit 1,000 subscribers on this channel. And also, let me know your favorite planet layer in the comments, I'd love to see. Without further ado though, let's get into it. Number 17, The Divide. In last, for the worst layer in the game, we have The Divide. If you've played Bananza, then this probably doesn't come as a surprise to you. The Divide is essentially just a fork in the road, allowing you to pick which of the next two layers you'd like to go do first. And that's literally its only purpose. There are some extra challenge rooms hidden around, as well as NPCs you can talk to for bananas, but that's about it. Beyond this, it's really just a bare-bones section of land in the middle of nowhere. The only props I can give is that the music gives off really chill vibes, but that doesn't deem it being any higher on the list. Number 16, The Junction. More or less the same story as the Divide, but rather than getting to choose a layer to enter, this is actually the exit point for both of those layers given as options in the Divide. The Junction, though, has slightly more bananas to collect than the Divide, and also sets up a pretty cool boss fight during the game's main story. Beyond that, though, this layer is just another boring wasteland in the sky, but because it has slightly more content, it gets the edge to the Divide. Okay, now that we've gotten those two layers out of the way, we can get into some more fleshed out layers that serve more purpose than just being filler. Number 15, Forbidden Layer. This layer is one of the last in the game, and mostly serves as a build-up to the final boss. It has a really eerie atmosphere that gives off shit's about to get real vibes. Despite that though, this layer is incredibly boring in every other aspect. The main gimmick of this layer is that you have to make your way to and from these platforms by throwing chunks that turn into a bridge. The catch is though, the chunks will only behave this way if you pay gold to this fractone who creates some kind of field in order for the chunks to do this. How much gold, you may ask? Well, it starts with a small fee of 2,000 gold, but there's actually 3 of these fractone businessmen scattered across the area, and the second one requires you to pay 5,000 gold, while the third asks for 9,999 gold. Now, I don't know about anyone else, but I did not have nearly enough gold to pay for all this. Maybe I just spent too much on DK and Pauline's drip, but I had to go and grind gold for like 20 minutes before I could come back and pay to get through for all 3 fractones. Granted, 20 minutes of gold hunting isn't that long, but the point is I just wanted to get across quickly since I knew the final boss was coming up and I was eager to play it. Maybe it was just me who didn't have enough gold though, I'm not sure. Moving on though, once you finally reach the edge of this layer, you've got to break through this set of concrete walls that brings you to a Void Kong boss fight. This boss fight is just alright for me. It was incredibly easy, but at least it's something. As I think you can tell by now, I am not a fan of this layer, and the only thing that puts it ahead of the Junction or the Divide is the fact that it's an actual layer with actual content. Still though, out of all the actual layers, this one is easily my least favorite. Enough said. Number 14, Landfill Layer. This layer is, you guessed it, meant to represent a landfill, given off by the dirty atmosphere and overall grimy vibe of the whole place. This is a fine idea and concept, but the execution could have been better in my opinion. This layer revolves around you mostly just digging around in order to find bananas and other secrets. In fact, there's hardly any open space in this layer besides a small main area with shops and fractones, as well as the boss arena. Beyond that though, this layer is just straight dirt, and you've kind of just got to dig around in it and hope you find something of use, which is where I started to lose interest in this layer. Don't get me wrong, the digging mechanic in this game is fun, but having to dig everywhere to find everything gets to be a slog really quickly. Of course, you don't have to go digging around if you don't care about the extra collectibles, but it makes the layer have very limited replayability when considering that there's only a minimal amount of open space to run around in post-game. I think this layer could have benefited from being just a little more open, allowing the player more space to use to their liking. As honestly, I think my favorite part of going back through these layers is just freely exploring with no goals or intentions, and then randomly running into a banana or a challenge room, but with this layer, it's pretty impossible to do that. Once again though, the digging mechanic in this game is great in moderation, but for an entire layer, it just doesn't do it for me. Credit where credit is due though, this layer does have a pretty neat boss fight at the end, which is probably the best part of this layer in all honesty. Number 13, Groove Layer. The Groove Layer is a pretty interesting one-off layer, and actually adds a lot to the story. Spoilers in 3, 2, 1. Okay, it begins with DK waking up in a jail cell after having just lost Pauline. DK of course breaks out of the cell in no time, and after helping out a not very friendly face, he manages to make it to the main attraction of the Groove Layer, the Disco Hall. Problem is, the Disco Hall is currently not very disco-y, which is why DK has to go to 3 different areas of the Groove Layer in order to get the beat on, literally. But this is where the cracks begin to form for me. You see, going to these 3 areas is very tedious and follows the same cycle throughout. You go to this tunnel to find, quote, the beat, and then dig through another tunnel to direct the beat to the giant speaker in the middle of the disco hall. Do this 3 times and boom, you're basically done with the layer. The Great Harmonial shows up and you find Pauline in its belly, which leads you to the next layer. As you can see, not the most interesting thing ever. As I said, this layer does numbers for the game's story, with DK and Pauline getting separated and all, but this doesn't make up for the fact that this layer is just kind of bland, for lack of a better term. I mean, it's kind of just a big white room with a massive speaker. Not to hate on disco fans, but this layer is just sort of boring. There is a neat side quest you can do upon coming back to the layer after beating the game, but once again, it doesn't carry the whole layer for me. Okay, I feel like I've been awfully negative towards these layers, but thankfully, we're getting into the layers that I actually enjoyed playing quite a lot. Don't get me wrong, I didn't hate any of these previous layers, and I don't want to sound like I hate this game at all, because I actually love it, but compared to the other layers in this game, these ones just don't stack up. Anyways though, it's time we shine some light on some of the good layers in this game. Let's go. Number 12, the Planet Core. The final layer in the game, and easily one of the coolest build-ups to a finale I've ever seen in a 3D platformer. After defeating Void Kong in the Forbidden Layer, it's revealed that the true final boss is actually King K. Rool, who runs away from DK and Pauline down to the Planet Core, and you have to find him by going through a whopping 10 sub-layers, all filled with enemies and challenges, as well as some bonus fractones and secrets along the way. My god, is it intense going through these sub-layers, knowing that you're unbelievably close to the final boss with King K. Rool. Throughout these sub-layers, you'll fight the Kremling crew, and also traverse your way through other obstacles. It was really cool for me to see the Kremlings make a return after all this time, and it made the experience just that much more fun. And then once you make it to the center of the Planet Core by reaching the Heart of Gold, you'll enter an epic boss fight with King K. Rool himself. Now, all of this is great, right? Therefore, why am I ranking it this low on the list? Well, it's because all of these sub-layers are kind of just a one and done thing. You'll go through them for the first time and you've seen it all. Upon revisiting the Planet Core, I was honestly just bored, and going through each sub-layer was pretty tiring. In fact, looking back, I think the Planet Core could have been cut down to just a few sub-layers rather than 10, because having to ride on a minecart for 20 seconds between each of these sub-layers is not very exciting, and to me, it would have been better if the Planet Core was just a larger interconnected layer. That's just me though. But we can't just not talk about the absolutely insane, wild, epic, creative, unique, exciting, and artful final boss fight that is King K. Rool. When I tell you this may be the best final boss I've ever played in a 3D platformer, I mean it, because this fight slaps. It begins in the Heart of Gold, where you'll fight K. Rool until you knock him out, and then boom, you've completed the game. Or at least that's what it looks like. The game will present you with a fake credit scene before showing K. Rool wake back up and using a whole last jetpack to fly his way up to DK and Pauline while they're making their way back up to the surface via the power of the Bananium root. You'll then fight K. Rool while soaring up to the surface, and eventually you'll make it to New Donk City. We're not done there though, because K. Rool has gotten hold of the Bananium root and is using it to take over New Donk City. You now have to make your way to K. Rool by platforming through the now dangerous city, using all of your Bananza transformations in the process. Finally, once you make it to K. Rool, there's one last phase you have to complete where K. Rool used the Bananium root to give himself his very own Bananza transformation. You're now fighting K. Rool in his most powerful form, dodging his attacks and hitting him any chance you get, until finally you knock him out one last time and actually complete the game. Wowie frickin' zowie, this fight is incredible, but does it warrant the Planet Core being higher on the list? Well, I personally don't think it does, and here's why. You see, although the Planet Core sets up this boss fight, only a third of it actually takes place in the Planet Core. The rest of it is either in New Donk City or this giant tunnel leading up to it. And if I'm being honest, the part in the Planet Core itself is probably the weakest area of the fight. This is where a lot of people will probably start disagreeing with me, but in all honesty, I just think the Planet Core is a kind of mediocre layer carried by an amazing boss fight. Let me know what you think in the comments though. Number 11, Racing Layer. I'm just gonna say it right off the bat, I am completely and 100% biased when it comes to this layer. Why? Well, I may or may not have spent over 6 hours in this layer one day because I was going for a world record on the regular race. If you're curious, by the way, I did manage to get the world record, and I have a video on it you can check out if you want to see the complete run. You may now refer to me as the regular race speedrun champion, everyone, because that's who I am. I don't talk about that though. In fact, what we need to talk about now is the racing layer. Now, as I said, I love this layer because of how much time I've put into it, but it has its qualities besides me just being completely biased. First of all, Diddy and Dixie Kong are there, which is cool to see, and they even reference previous DK games as well as bring up freaking Candy Kong, which unironically made me gasp out loud upon seeing it for the first time. Then there is of course the racetrack where you race against Diddy and Dixie Kong on rhinos, and once you beat them in the race, you get to go up to this trophy and move on to the next layer. Now, I know what you're thinking. This doesn't sound special, but, well, okay, you know what? I'll just say it. The racing layer is not better than the Planet Core, but I'm still putting it a higher spot because, like I said, I'm just biased. But either way, I think this layer still belongs in one of the lower spots just due to the lack of actual content within it. there's only 10 bananas and not much land to explore. At the end of the day, I've kinda got mixed opinions on this layer, so let's just move on to our next layer and call it a day, shall we? Number 10, Hilltop Layer. I don't have a whole lot to say about this one. It's a flat plane of grass with some hills thrown in there. Yeah, not really much to do here. It kinda feels like a big filler layer, but I still had some fun with it. Well, sure, it is a really flat landscape with not a whole lot of extra monuments or challenges. It's really fun to roam around in and randomly find a banana or fossil lurking around, and if you use the turf surfing mechanic here, you basically just have a large playground to mess around in. Other than that though, this is like the most 6.5 out of 10 layer for me, but I can cut it some slack considering it is one of the first layers in the game and is still trying to ease you into the gameplay and mechanics you'll be using throughout the rest of your journey. Then again though, considering this is what came before it, it makes this layer look pretty underwhelming by comparison. Honestly, if the terrain just had more twists, turns, and curves thrown into the mix, it could have been very well more interesting. Alas though, this is what we got. Not bad, but not great by any means. Number 9, Feast Layer. This is where things probably start to get very controversial, as the Feast Layer is regarded by many as one of the best layers in the game, but me personally, I just don't get the hype. But before we get to that, I'll start with the things I like about this layer, because it's not a bad layer by any means. First of all, I think the idea behind it is very cool. It's an amusement park based around food, because the entire place is literally made out of food. In fact, its main attraction is the Banana Burger, a massive burger that towers over the whole layer. But to get it to appear there, you need to hit 5 burger switches scattered around the map. In order to reach these switches, you'll have to go through obstacles that utilize all of your Bananza powers, which is fun. However, for me, it just got to be kind of repetitive after the 3rd or 4th switch. Anyways though, once the Banana Burger is assembled, you have to climb up it and then take the tunnel down to the next sub-layer, which is basically a sewer / storage area for the park. Get through here and you'll be on to the next layer. Now for me, the weakest part of the Feast layer is going and hitting the switches to assemble the Banana Burger, just because, as I said, it felt somewhat repetitive, even though the obstacles are different for getting to each switch. Maybe that's just me though. Where I enjoyed this layer more was coming back to it in post-game and just freely exploring it, finding bananas and fossils as well as uncovering other secrets. The main story part of this layer was just alright for me, even though it does take on a bit of a different approach compared to other layers, which is nice to see. Still though, after all that, I just didn't absolutely love this layer like other people I've seen, but I still thoroughly enjoyed my time with it. Something about the overall vibe of it just isn't my favorite though, or maybe I'm just not a big fan of carnival themes. Either way though, the overall verdict of this layer is, it's pretty good. I just prefer some of the layers we have coming up even more. Number 8, Lagoon Layer. One of the first actual layers in the game, beyond Ingot Isle, which acts more as a tutorial. This layer is a pretty great introduction to an amazing game. You'll get your first Bananza transformation here, unlock Pauline, and defeat your first boss, among other things. It has a really chill but playful vibe, told not only by the music, but also the relatively simple gameplay and overall theming. Now, as you might expect, this layer doesn't have a ton to offer in terms of difficulty, as it's still teaching new players the mechanics of the game, and what they can expect later on. This means that when playing through this layer for the first time, it's a blast, uncovering challenge rooms, fossils, and bananas all for the first time, and also learning how DK's moveset works. As well as this, getting to use Kong Bananza for the very first time is tons of fun, and upon unlocking it, it gets utilized pretty well in the upcoming parts of the layer. However, despite this layer being really fun as a beginner, it loses some of its pizzazz upon revisiting it. Now sure, there is a bonus mission to be done regarding the Kong Elder that makes use of more difficult skills, but beyond that, the gameplay is a little lackluster after having pretty well mastered your moveset throughout the rest of the game. Even with that taken into consideration though, I still really enjoyed this layer and had fun collecting more bananas and fossils within it during post-game. The vibes are also off the charts with this one. Number 7, Ingot Isle Cave-In. Some people may be confused as to why I have this layer this high on the list, because seemingly it's just a tutorial layer meant to teach you some basic mechanics and nothing else. But there's actually more to this layer later on in the game. Post-game spoilers in 3, 2, 1. Alright, if you've completed Bananza, then you'll know you get to come back to this layer as a sort of bonus world in post-game. But rather than being a short tutorial area, it actually opens up and lets you explore more freely. But why do I have this layer this high up on the list? Well, I've got one word for you. Challenge. Yeah, that's right. This layer, in my opinion, actually houses some of the most challenging bananas and obstacles compared to any other layer in this game. This is likely because it is a special post-game layer meant to challenge the player and let them use what they've learned to their advantage. I'm specifically referring to the bonus rooms Grumpy Kong builds that offer a giant enemy rush where if you fail once, you're reset back to the very beginning. Now, I know this style of gameplay isn't for everyone, but for me, it was actually pretty thrilling, and I had a lot of fun with it despite its challenge. As for the rest of this layer, there aren't a whole lot of bananas to be collected. However, I found that the bananas that are there were hidden in clever places or make really good use of your Bananza powers, which I just thought was a lot of fun. Now, in terms of the theme of this layer, it's just your basic cave world and not much else, but I still thoroughly enjoyed my time with it, okay? These are just my opinions. I know this is probably a controversial place to put this layer, but I had a lot of fun with it, alright? Number 6, Canyon Layer. The Canyon Layer is sort of a mix between a desert mesa and an oasis. Now, although this is a theme we've seen done time and time again to some capacity, this layer actually manages to switch things up and put a unique spin on the desert-esque theme. You see, it begins in the mesa area itself, where you'll find shops and other establishments. However, as you move ahead, you'll be introduced to these minecarts that take you from place to place in this layer. The first and second minecart tracks aren't very interesting, I'll say that, as you're really just moving ahead with not much to do, but once you get to the next sub-layer, the whole landscape not only changes as you're now in an underground mine minecart mining facility, but the minecart rides themselves also become more interesting. They'll take more twists and turns, it'll introduce obstacles you need to jump over, and you can even use explosive rocks in order to uncover bananas and fossils. The underground area in general also just provides more of a challenge and has a more interesting theme in my opinion. But where things get even more fun is the Mad Mixer boss fight, a fight that takes place completely on a minecart. You'll circle around the Mad Mixer and throw explosive rocks at him in order to defeat him. Not the most difficult boss by any means, but still unique and interesting. Speaking of boss fights, this layer has some fun ones, including a fight against Grumpy Kong in a big concrete mech type thing, and the Stomp and Clomper, which I both enjoyed despite their lack of difficulty. This whole layer is also very large and has lots of secrets, including bananas and fossils lurking around, as well as other neat areas that are completely optional for the main story, but are still neat to explore. I also had a lot of fun coming back to this layer, and to me, it's definitely one of the most polished and fleshed out layers in the game. I don't love the theme itself, as the whole desert slash mesa slash oasis theme in platformers has been pretty overdone, but I like the approach this layer took on with it, and it makes it feel different in a way. Solid layer for sure. Alright, we're moving on to the top 5 layers. These are the layers I believe to be the best the game has to offer, and what I would consider S tier. Let's go. Number 5, Radiance Layer. A very large layer that manages to stay fun and interesting throughout basically the entire thing. Here you'll unlock the snake Bananza, which ends up being used very well and cleverly throughout the rest of the layer, which definitely adds to the fun. The interesting thing about this layer is that it has two polar opposite themes based on what sublayer you're in. In the first two sublayers, you're in a dark and mysterious cave environment, but upon moving further to the next sublayers, you'll be greeted by a sunny and almost beach-like themed area. This is because the later sublayers use an artificial form of sunlight by using these super bright stage light looking things. You'll use these lights by hitting them in different directions in order to activate certain platforms throughout a lot of this layer, which actually is a pretty fun gimmick. This paired with using the snake Bananza makes this layer have some of the most fun mechanics and ideas in the whole game in my opinion. I also love the theme of starting out in a cave-like environment and then switching to a sunny area was very well put together, and it actually had a surprisingly smooth transition between them. Overall, this layer just tells a story. Everything feels connected in a way while also being different and having unique ideas throughout. There is one new thing implemented here that I wasn't a fan of though, and it's these enemies that can only be defeated when in sunlight. You see, there's areas in this layer and the rest of the layers to come that force you to lure these enemies out of a shady area and into sunlight in order to defeat them. This is a neat concept, but it just makes defeating certain enemies take way longer than it needs to, but that's probably my biggest gripe with this layer, and everything else about it is really fun. Number 4, Resort Layer. This is easily the chillest layer in the game, just a big open area to freely run slash swim around in while uncovering secrets along the way. Its big gimmick is these giant fruits that you can break open to find bananas, fossils, and sometimes even access to secret areas. What's funny about this layer is that I actually wasn't a big fan of it when I first played through it. That's because in the main story, you only really experience about 10% of the whole layer. You mostly just use liftoff rock to fly yourself up to this huge watermelon, which grants you access to the next layer. Which is why I wasn't expecting to enjoy this layer as much as I did when I came back to revisit it, but lo and behold, I absolutely love this layer now, and as I said before, just freely running around and exploring it while breaking open fruits to find collectibles is surprisingly chill and fun. You also find fun puzzles and challenges that once again grant you bananas upon completion, and of course there are your run-of-the-mill bonus rooms. I actually don't have much more to say about this layer beyond that. I just had a blast running around and exploring it. Enough said. Number 3, Tempest Layer. I adore basically everything about this layer, from the theme to the Bananza power to the gameplay. It's all great. Let's talk about it. Alright, as the name may suggest, the Tempest Layer is a stormy, rain-infested layer whose inhabitants are elephants. Here you'll unlock the Elephant Bananza, which is a really satisfying Bananza to use, and the entirety of the Tempest Layer makes really fun and clever uses out of it. Now, when you begin in this layer, you start out in this stormy environment above. However, after you unlock Elephant Bananza, you'll get to better explore this molten lava cave area that's underneath. Not only is the theme once again super cool down here with lava all around you, including lava rain falling from above, but this is also where the Elephant Bananza gets to really shine. You'll use its trunk in order to suck up materials that can be used to zipline across these rails, and you'll also use these materials as an umbrella, as weird as that sounds, to block the lava rain from hitting DK and Pauline. It's a really neat concept that I thought was executed really well. Overall, I just really love this part of the layer. It kind of feels like a large lava hot spring. Super refreshing, I'm sure. Anyways, after this, you'll get to fight the Blusterwing, a usually peaceful creature being controlled by Void Kong. He'll end up running away during this fight, and the rest of this layer is basically more platforming and using your Elephant Bananza in order to get through the storm to the Blusterwing. And might I add, these boss fights are actually really cool. They have epic vibes and an intense atmosphere surrounding them. Overall, this layer is incredible, and just like the Radiance layer, I really feel like it tells a story, having to chase down the sinister Blusterwing and all throughout the different sublayers. Also, like the Radiance layer, the sublayers and parts of this world are really well connected despite their differences from each other. I don't think this layer needs any more explaining. It's great. Number 2, Freezer Layer. The name of this layer is only partially true. Yes, most of this layer is a snowy, freezing landscape. However, there are also parts of this layer that are completely lava-filled and scorching hot. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Freeze Flame Galaxy. The freezer layer. Okay, jokes aside though, this layer is incredible. It begins in a super snowy blizzard environment before moving to a warm molten lava scape, which then eventually leads you to the main area of this layer, which is a mix between the two warm and cold areas, and also where you'll meet the zebra elder. That's right, here you'll unlock the zebra Bananza, which allows you to run fast and also go across platforms that you couldn't as regular DK. Now personally, the zebra Bananza is my least favorite Bananza. This is because I barely found any other instances outside of this layer where it's actually used. And it's a real shame because this Bananza had a lot of potential and has a really cool idea behind it. But this isn't a Bananza transformation ranking, thus let's talk about some more of the freezer layer. Overall, I love the theme of this layer and how well it manages to combine the two quite literally polar opposite themes. The choice of aesthetic they went for with these areas is really cool as well, and I think it turned out pretty sweet. Also with this layer, I love how well the zebra Bananza is used in it. Now, like I said, I don't think this particular Bananza is used very well outside of this layer, but within it, there's some really cool sections that utilize it, like where you run up this big bridge, or even in the Inflaminite boss fight that actually combines the two themes of this layer. There's also a neat Poppy Kong boss fight that I thought was cool even though it's piss easy. Just figured I'd point that out. Anyways though, beyond the boss fights and Bananza sections, the rest of this layer is simply amazing. I can't get over how much I love the theme of it, especially the snowy sections, but both of them are great. As well as this, revisiting this layer was a blast. Finding well-hidden secrets and exploring more nooks and crannies of these hot and cold environments was super fun, and it's overall such a well put together layer, but it's just not quite as good as what we have at number 1. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it is time to reveal the best layer in Donkey Kong Bananza, in my opinion, in 3, 2, 1. Number 1, Forest Layer. That's right, my personal favorite layer in Donkey Kong Bananza. It takes roots from the OG DK, going back to the forest environment we've come to know and love in the original games. Putting that aside though, this layer is incredible in every aspect. First of all, the theming is on point. Sure, this is far from the first time we've seen a forest theme done before in a platformer, but just like I said with the canyon layer, it manages to really level things up. First of all, this isn't just any old forest, because all of the trees and surrounding forest that's features are absolutely massive, allowing you to use DK's climbing seals to reach the top of them, where you'll usually find bananas or other secret/challenge areas waiting. As well as this, however, you'll also get to make use of the Ostrich Bananza ability, unlocked from talking to this layer's elder, who lies in the Eggshell Hotel. That's right, this layer has a freaking hotel in it, but as the name would suggest, it's inside of a massive eggshell. This alone is super cool, and you'll also get to explore it to find bananas and fossils. I love how quirky and unique this idea is. It's such a Nintendo thing to throw into a game. Anyways, the Ostrich Bananza, let's talk about that, because this is my personal favorite Bananza in the game, which is ironic considering it's actually the layer adjacent to the freezer layer, which has my least favorite Bananza. The Ostrich Bananza, though, grants you the ability to fly, which is an incredibly helpful ability that is not only useful in this layer, but also throughout the entire game. This layer makes a particularly good use out of it, though, as there are many high up or far away areas that are pretty tough to reach if you don't use the Ostrich Bananza. Also, might I add that the soundtrack for this Bananza slaps. I mean, this whole game's OST is pretty incredible, but specifically this track goes hard. Anyways, though, for the rest of this layer, you'll find yourself traversing through trees, bouncing on these jelly blocks, using Ostrich Bananza to reach certain platforms, and ending it off with an epic boss fight against Abracadabra, an absolutely massive creature whose boss fight takes up basically an entire layer. As you can see, this layer has a lot to offer, and I love all of it. It has an interesting story and a cool theme to go along with it, the best Bananza transformation in my opinion, really cool gimmicks and ideas, and to top it all off, it's absolutely massive and features a lot to do, which is just another reason why this layer is my number 1. And there you have it, my ranking for every layer in Donkey Kong Bananza. I truly have been loving this game, and I had a lot of fun making this video where I just get to yap about all the layers it has to offer, even if some of them aren't the best. Anyways, let me know what your favorite planet layer is in the comments, because I read every comment I get, and there's a very good chance I'll respond to yours. Once again, this ranking is just my opinion, and it's totally fine if you don't agree, but if you do disagree, also please let me know what you would have ranked differently in the comments. Now, before I head out, please consider leaving a like and subscribing if you did enjoy this video. It really would mean a lot, and please, Nintendo, give this game some DLC. I need more planet layers to explore. Okay, thanks, but with all that said, I will see you all in the next one. Later!